So before we get into this, do make sure to go through my Jazz Survival Guide video. That's going to establish a foundation of shapes that we're going to build our inversions from. We're going to start off with the C major 7 chord rooted on the A string. Root, 5th, 7th, 3rd. So to invert this, we're going to stay on this same string set. That's strings A, D, G and B, and we're going to avoid the 2 E strings for now. Each note moves along sequentially to the next interval in the chord. So the root is going to move along to the 3rd. The 5th is going to move along to the 7. The 7 is going to move along to the root, and the 3 is going to move along to the 5. If we plot all of those points out, we get this shape. First inversion, C major 7. 3rd, 7th, root, 5th. Now to invert this, we repeat the process. Each note moves along sequentially to the next note in the chord. So the 3rd is going to move along to the 5th, the 7 is going to move along to the root is going to move along to the 3rd, and the 5th will move up to the 7. Put those notes together and we get this shape. Clearly this looks like an open E chord where we've added the 7 on top. Now the way I personally play this is I use the tip of my second finger to bar both the A and D strings. 5th, root, 3rd, 7th. So that's our second inversion, C major 7. Now because there's 4 notes in this chord, that means there's going to be one more inversion we can do, the 3rd inversion. Same process again, right? So the 5th will move all the way up to the 7. The root will move all the way up to the 3rd. The 3rd will move up to the 5th. And the 7 will move up to the root. Put those together, this is the shape that you get. C major 7 3rd inversion. 7, 3, 5, 1. So, in summary, here are our 4 shapes. The root position. The first inversion will always have the 3rd in the bass. Second inversion has the 5th in the bass. Third inversion has the 7 in the bass. Next, let's move on to our dominant 7ths. So all we have to do is flatten the 7 in each of those shapes. So here was the 7 on the 4th fret of the G string, so we flatten that to the 3rd fret. And now we have our C dominant 7, or C7 for short. Root, 5th, flat 7, 3. The first inversion of C major 7 was this. We just have to figure out which of these notes was the 7, the note on the D string, and flatten it. And reshuffle the fingers to make the shape more comfortable. Root position, first inversion. Next shape, second inversion, 5th, root, 3rd, flat 7. And then the final shape, with the flat 7 in the bass. Next, let's flatten the 3rd. The note on the B string goes down a semitone. Now look what we've got. We've got C minor 7, root, 5th, flat 7, flat 3. So that would be our root position, C minor 7. To find the first inversion, let's use our previous chord and modify it. So this was the C7. We need to figure out where the 3rd is and flatten it to make it minor 7. So now you've got flat 3, flat 7, root and 5th. Same process for the other shapes. The 3rd was here, so we flattened that. That would be the second inversion. Then in the final shape, the 3rd was on the D string, so we flattened that. 3rd inversion, C minor 7. So here are our C minor 7s. Root position, first inversion, second inversion, 3rd inversion. Of course, all of these shapes are going to be neatly typed up for the lesson materials. You'll get the tab, the chord grids and the finger numbers all included. The lesson materials for this one are available exclusively through my Patreon. Now the next chord, C minor 7 flat 5. We've got our C minor 7s figured out already. All we need to do now is flatten the 5. The 5 was on the D string. So now you have root, flat 5, flat 7 and flat 3. C minor 7 flat 5, root position. Now let's get our first inversion of that. It's going to look like this. You've got got your flat 3, your flat 7, your root, and the flat 5. C minor 7 flat 5, first inversion, or C minor 7 flat 5 with the 3 in the bass. Okay, the next inversion, the one with the flat 5 in the bass. This is our second inversion. Flat 5, root, flat 3, flat 7. Third inversion is going to have the flat 7 in the bass. Flat 7, flat 3, flat 5, root. C minor 7 flat 5, third inversion. Here are those shapes again. Now let's flatten the already flattened 7th. That will make it a 6th, but in the land of the diminished we call that a double flat 7. So now you've got root, flat 5, double flat 7, flat 3. That's a C diminished 7th. Now if you've seen my diminished lesson already, you'll know where we're going with this one. But the interesting thing, spoiler alert, is that the shape stays the same for each inversion on your diminished. It's what you call a symmetrical chord, and that's because each of the notes in the chord is a minor third apart. The notes are equidistant. So here's your C diminished root position, your first inversion, your second inversion, third inversion, move up again, back to the root position, just moving up in minor thirds, or 3 fret spans each time. You might also want to pay some attention to what we have in the bass with each of those, like we've done with the previous chords. C diminished 7 with the root in the bass, C diminished 7 with the flat 3 in the bass, C diminished 7 with the 5th in the bass, C diminished 7 with a double flat 7 in the bass. Okay, so that wraps up our shapes on the A string. Let's move all of those voicings to the top 4 strings now. So C major 7, what did we have? We had root, 5th, 7th, 3. If we construct that same voicing from the D string, we get this: root, 5th, 7, 3. A different looking shape, but the exact same voicing. Okay, so there's C major 7, root position off the D string. Now the same process as before. To invert this, we move each note along sequentially. So here's your root position, here's your first inversion. Very pretty and delicate sounding, especially in that upper register. Let's move it down an octave as well, just so we can hear it down here. 3rd, 7, root, 5th. Next inversion, the one with the 5th in the bass. 5, 1, 3, 7. And the final shape, the one with the 7 in the bass. 7, 3, 5, 1. So your 4 shapes for C major 7 on the top 4 strings would be this: root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. Now I've already gone through this process on the other string set, so I'm going to streamline things a little bit and move a bit quicker. We need to just flatten the 7 now to find our C dominant 7. The 7 was on the B string, so now this is the shape we have. That might look familiar as like an open D7 kind of chord shape, where the root would have been the open D string. But now we're up on the 10th fret of the D string, so we get a C7. First inversion, of course, we'll have the 3rd in the bass. Let's move it down an octave as well. So that would be the 3rd, the flat 7, the root, and the 5th. Second inversion is the one with the 5th in the bass. 5, 1, 3, flat 7. And then third inversion will have the flat 7 in the bass. Flat 7, 3, 5, 1. So here are those 4 shapes. Now let's make them C minor 7 by flattening the 3rd in each of those. Really useful shape this, especially for chord melody and jazz. Root, 5th, flat 7, flat 3. C minor 7 rooted on the D string. First inversion, it's going to have the flat 3 in the bass. Let's do it down this octave. That's flat 3, flat 7, root and 5th. Second inversion is the one with the 5th in the bass. That one looks very clearly like an open A minor chord with the 7 added on the top string. So that's 5, 1, flat 3, flat 7. Next one's the easiest one of the lot. Flatten the 3rd here and you've just got one finger. Flat 7, flat 3, 5 and 1. So here are our 4 shapes for the C minor 7 on the top 4 strings. Next, C minor 7 flat 5. So we just need to take our C minor 7th, find the 5th and flatten it. The 5th was on the G string. So there's our C minor 7 flat 5 root position. First inversion, the one with the flat 3 in the bass. Let's move it down an octave again. Second inversion has the flat 5 in the bass. You can play that with a bunch of different fingerings, like a lot of these shapes. Practice all of them. And then the third inversion with the flat 7 in the bass. So here's all 4 of those C minor 7 flat 5 voicings. Now finally C diminished 7. Remember, these are all going to end up looking the same. What did we start with there? We had this. Let's take the flat 7 and flat it for a second time. Now you've got this shape here. C diminished 7 rooted on the D string. Move it up 3 frets for the first inversion. Let's go down the octave again. Move it up 3 frets again. There's your second inversion. 3 frets more. There's your third inversion. And then one more time you're back to your root position. Now let's look at one more string set for our inversions. Let's look at some common jazz voicings rooted on the low E string. These are all referred to as drop 3 voicings. C major 7, rooted on the low string, 8th fret. Root, skip the A string, then the 7th, then the 3rd, and then the 5th. C major 7. Now if we invert again along the same string set, our first inversion is going to look like this. So that's the 3rd in the bass, then the root, then the 5th, then the 7th. The next shape is going to look like this. One of my favourites, that. That's a C major 7 with the 5th in the bass. 5, 3, 7, 1. Sounds really nice in the upper ranges as well, that one. And then the final shape will be the one with the 7 in the bass. 7, 5, 1, 3. So to summarise, root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. Now to turn these into C dominant 7ths, I think you know the process by now, we need to flatten the 7. So the 7 was on the D string, so to flatten that we're going to end up with this shape. This is one that I often use my thumb over the top for, but as always, practice all the possible fingerings for these things. So root, flat 7, 3 and 5. First inversion, another favourite of mine. 3, 1, 5, flat 7. Second inversion. Looks pretty familiar now, right? That one. It's like a C7 open chord with the 5th in the bass. 5, 3, flat 7, 1. This next one's really cool as well, with the flat 7 in the bass. C major triad with a flat 7 down low. Now next, we're going to flatten the 3rd in order to turn all of these dominant 7ths into minor 7ths. The 3rd was on the G string, so we end up with this. Again, I'm sure you've seen that one many times. Root, flat 7, flat 3 and 5. Then the first inversion, flat 3 in the bass, root, 5, flat 7. Second inversion, one with the 5th in the bass, 5, flat 3, flat 7, 1. Third inversion, one with the flat 7 in the bass, flat 7, 5, 1, flat 3. Now C minor 7 flat 5, of course we start with C minor 7 and just take the 5 and flatten it. Root, flat 7, flat 3, flat 5. First inversion, one with the flat 3 down low, then the root, then the flat 5 and the flat 7. Second inversion is going to have the flat 5 in the bass. So that's flat 5, flat 3, flat 7 and 1. And then the third inversion is going to have the flat 7 in the bass. Flat 7, flat 5, 1, flat 3. And finally, we're going to turn all of those into diminished sevenths by flattening the already flat 7. So here was your C minor 7 flat 5, flat 7 was on the D string, flattening it again to create a double flat 7, therefore a C diminished 7th chord, which as you can predict is going to invert every 3 frets, the same shape. Root in the bass, flat 3 in the bass, flat 5 in the bass, double flat 7 in the bass. Now you might be wondering, what about 6th chords like major 6 and minor 6? Well, you might have noticed that throughout the process there, we did uncover some of those, but they were posing as different things at the time. For example, C minor 7, what did the first inversion look like? It's the same thing as an E flat 6. E flat major 6, right? That would be the root, the 6th, the 3 and the 5. If you know about your relative major and minor, that can sort of make sense on a superficial level, and that's all you need. You just need to be able to quickly remember which one would be related to which other chord. And of course that accounts for all of those inversions, so any of your C minor 7 inversions could double up as E flat major 6th inversions. Pretty useful. And then by the same token, if you took your C minor 7 flat 5 inversions, these would double up as E flat minor 6, root 6, flat 3 and 5. So you're getting 2 chords for the price of 1 with a lot of these. Now of course we did all of those with a C root. It's really important that you now take this on and take the responsibility of moving it through your remaining 11 other positions or 11 other keys. I'd recommend going through a cycle of fourths to give it some kind of musical structure, and so that you're not simply shuffling things up and down in semitones, because it's kind of pointless to do it that way. So what I mean by the cycle of fourths would be that now you've done all your C's, move to F next, then B flat, then E flat, then A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E flat, A, D, G, and then you're back home to C. Before you know it, you've covered all 12 keys. Repeat that process on all of your string sets, and bear in mind the duality of some of those shapes. You know, the minor 7ths also being the relative major 6th, and the minor 7 flat 5 doubling up as a minor 6th, a minor 3rd higher. And I'd recommend using the tune All the Things You Are, one of the great jazz standards, as an exercise for applying as many of these shapes and inversions as you can. That song contains 5 key centers, so you'll get plenty of mileage out of these shapes. Plus, it sounds pretty amazing, so win-win. Okay, so like I said before, all of the lesson materials for this are available exclusively through my Patreon. So I reckon this lesson and the Jazz Survival Guide lesson go together quite well as a part 1 and part 2, this being the part 2. You'll get so much value out of learning all of these shapes and their inversions. I mean, chord melody playing requires it as a fundamental, but also for accompanying and playing textural guitar parts, these things are priceless. So let me know down in the comments if you have any questions at all. I always aim to answer very quickly. And thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week for another lesson. Take care.